This week, the Church celebrates the feast of Corpus Christi. We learn about the Pope's plans for a new encyclical, and we talk to the person who predicted Benedict XVI's retirement. Hello and welcome to Vatican Connections. It is the close of the month of Mary, and it's also a week of important feasts and celebrations in the Church. So let's find out how they're being marked. Taking part in a Roman tradition, Pope Francis celebrated Mass at the Basilica of St. John Lateran for the feast of Corpus Christi. After the Mass, he led a Eucharistic procession down Rome's Via Merulana to the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, or St. Mary Major. We'll have more details on his homily and who else participated coming up later in the program. Now, in many parts of the world, the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ is moved to the next Sunday. The Vatican knows this, so in order to mark the feast with all the faithful around the world, they've organized a massive, worldwide, synchronized hour of Eucharistic adoration on Sunday, June 2nd. Pope Francis will preside over adoration and benediction at St. Peter's Basilica at 5 p.m. on Sunday, June 2nd. At the same time, adoration will be held in hundreds of dioceses around the world. So Catholics in New York and Toronto would be in adoration at 11 a.m. local time. Seattle and Vancouver would start at 8 a.m. their time. If you go to the website annusfidei.va, you can find a list of dioceses participating in this hour of prayer. Any diocese or parish can participate. They just have to figure out what time in their city corresponds to 5 p.m. in Rome and organize adoration and benediction for that hour. Pope Francis has two intentions he would like everyone to pray for during the hour of adoration. The first is for the Church and its mission of mercy, and the second is for the needs of those who suffer, including victims of war, the unemployed, the sick, immigrants, and prisoners. Now, another topic that's been getting a lot of ink lately is the issue of a papal encyclical. We have learned that Pope Francis is planning to issue a new encyclical based on one that Pope Benedict was writing before he retired. But the real story in this is how we came to find out about the encyclical. Pope Francis has been meeting with Italian bishops on their ad limina visits. One of these meetings recently included Bishop Luigi Martella of Molfetta in the Puglia region. Molfetta is a small city about 45 minutes outside of Bari. Bishop Martella wrote a letter to parishioners that was posted on his diocesan website, and in that letter he said he met with Pope Francis during his ad limina and the bishops had inquired after Benedict XVI's health. According to Bishop Martella, Pope Francis said he had been worried about Benedict's health, but, quote, now he is much better. And to reassure them about the retired pontiff's state of health, he said that Benedict had finished writing the encyclical he had been working on and it will be released, signed by Pope Francis. Well, that sent Italian media into a frenzy. The Vatican spokesperson, Father Federico Lombardi, told Catholic News Service he can absolutely deny that Benedict XVI is working on the encyclical. However, it is true that the plan for an encyclical on faith, which was started by Pope Benedict, has been taken up by the new Pope. So we can expect an encyclical to be released during the year of faith. Now, there's a second encyclical that's being talked about. Bishop Martella also wrote that Pope Francis said he is planning an encyclical on poverty in the evangelical sense, and it will be called Beati Pauperes, or Blessed are the Poor. Now, for that encyclical, we'll just have to wait and see. One Vatican official is currently traveling, and it's no small trip. Cardinal Leonardo Sandri is the head of the Congregation for Oriental Churches. This week, he's visiting Lebanon and Jordan. Now, in Lebanon, he visited a refugee camp where Syrians who have fled their country are currently living. During his visit, he also made an appeal for the release of the two Syrian bishops who were kidnapped last month. Cardinal Sandri said there are contradictory rumors going around about their current condition. One of the kidnapped bishops is a friend of Cardinal Sandri's, and he again appealed during an interview with Vatican Radio for the release of the two bishops. The second part of Cardinal Sandri's trip would take him to Jordan. On Monday, the Vatican's daily bulletin showed that Pope Francis met with Cardinal Velasio de Paulis. Many would ask, so what? Well, Cardinal de Paulis is the prelate who oversaw the investigation into the Legionaries of Christ, the order founded by Marcial Maciel, who we now know led a double life and abused several young men. While the Vatican didn't reveal the content of the meeting between the Pope and Cardinal de Paulis, the Legionaries issued a statement on their website saying the two men met for 45 minutes. During that time, Cardinal de Paulis told the Pope about the various stages of the investigation and said that the order's branch of lay consecrated people, Regnum Christi, needs a statute of its own to regulate the life of its members. The leaders of the three branches of the Legionaries wrote a letter to all members, inviting them to take part in a special novena to the Sacred Heart as an act of reconciliation and healing. You'll recall a little while back, Pope Francis filled a vacancy at the Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Institutes of Apostolic Life by appointing the head of the Fransiscans to that congregation. Well, now the Franciscans have a new minister general, an American, and he tells us how Pope Francis is challenging the Franciscans.
Pope Francis, he has energized us, and he's also challenged us. He's challenged us just by who he is. When Pope Francis, the evening that he was elected, I was here in the Curia watching the television with the brothers. And when I heard the name that he chose, first I had no doubt that he was Francis of Assisi. I had no doubt because to his left stood Cardinal Humas, who is a Franciscan, the former Archbishop of São Paulo in Brazil. So when he said that, the people were saying, well, which Francis is it? Well, I looked and I said, I have no doubt about that. And then I physically started shaking. I started shaking because I said, this man has taken the name of the person we hold as a model for us to call us to live faithfully the gospel. And I started thinking how short sometimes we fall in living the gospel. And I think this has been a reflection that I've heard from Franciscans in different parts of the world, the number that I've talked to. And the sense is that I think his authenticity is challenging us to rediscover our own authenticity and calling us to simplify our lives and to speak less and to demonstrate more who we are, not for our own sake, not to call attention to ourselves, but to call attention to the very specific things that what this simplicity of life means. It means greater life for all people. It means a greater access to all that people need in order to have dignity and to be able to survive on this small, tiny planet we have. And it means respecting creation so that we cannot destroy the environment in which we live, but where we can live, cohabit in a dignified manner with the planet and assure that the planet itself also has a future.
You may have heard the word Vaticanista mentioned here a few times, and it sounds like a potentially contagious disease or an Italian delicacy. But it actually refers to a journalist who covers the Vatican. Now, I had a chance to catch up with one Vaticanista who is not only a great friend of Salt and Light, but is the one journalist who saw the signs pointing to an imminent papal resignation. He's also the one journalist who saw signs that Cardinal Bergoglio had made an impression on the College of Cardinals. I spoke to John Thavis about the biggest myths people hold about the Vatican, the effect of Pope Francis's style of leadership, and his own fondest memories from his 30 years covering the Vatican.
People misunderstand the Vatican mainly because what they know about the Vatican is from headlines they read. Very few people get inside the Vatican. Even those who go to Rome, as you know, see St. Peter's Square, and they look at those buildings and think, I wonder what goes on back there. They really don't know. So they envision a Vatican that is extremely wealthy. That's one of the myths. Vatican is not extremely wealthy. It is cash poor. It operates on a budget of about $330 million a year, which is smaller, I think, than most American universities. It has art, it has real estate, but those are not things that are easily converted into cash. And I think people also assume that the Vatican is hermetically sealed. It keeps secrets like no other institution in the world. Well, it wasn't too long before I was working there as a journalist that I found out if you make the effort to talk to sources, they will talk to you and try to be helpful. And I think, of course, this is a great thing. I don't want a Vatican that's hermetically sealed. It sometimes leaks like a sieve. Now, recently we had leaked confidential papal documents, and I'm sure that for everyone that's kind of going a little too far. But the fact that people will talk to reporters who make an effort, I think, is a good thing. And one final myth about the Vatican is that it is a kind of classic power structure that operates like a well-oiled machine. You would think that with the Pope on top and giving orders, that those orders might filter down and be carried out by a small army of underlings. But in fact, what actually happens is, oftentimes, one Vatican department is not aware of what other departments are doing. What the Pope may want to happen simply doesn't always happen. There are Roman Curia offices that go back hundreds of years, some of them. They are protecting their turf, they're protecting their own history, and to some extent they're protecting their own authority. Well, I think Pope Francis clearly has brought a new vision to the papacy. I think he wants to be Pope in a different way. And by that I mean, looking at his own words, he said before the conclave he would like to see a church that is less self-referencing. And I think he wants the church to be where the people are. And for him, that means contact with people. I think the fact that he has not moved into the papal apartments, for example, was done not because the papal apartments are a rich man's residence, but because he would have been cut off from people. As it is, he's saying these morning masses for 50 or 60 Vatican employees and others who come in. He's dining in the common dining room. He has contact with real people, and I think it's important for him to keep that up. I think Pope Francis wants a church that is, as he put it, of the poor, for the poor, that is poor. And certainly other popes have taught this teaching, but I think Francis wants to embody it in his own life. I think that's one reason why he's downsized some of these traditions that have gone along with the papacy. You know, you can make too much of him saying, I don't want the ermine-trimmed cape. But it was a gesture that immediately resonated with people. And I think that's why he's getting a very long honeymoon. I think people are favorably impressed by his approach to the papacy. I think that the small stylistic changes we're seeing are a prelude to something much bigger. We already learned this week that Pope Francis plans to write an encyclical on poverty. Blessed are the poor. This, of course, is not going to change church teaching. It is going to enunciate it in a way that hopefully will be understandable to people outside the church. And I think what we're going to see is not only documents, but we're going to see it in action. We're going to see gestures, and we're going to see reorganization of the Vatican itself. Certainly Pope Francis wants to put an end to these kind of small-scale financial scandals that have plagued the Vatican for a couple of decades now. And I think we're going to see a reorganization. I think we're going to see greater transparency. And I think we're going to see social justice being implemented in the Pope's backyard. My favorite Vatican memory, wow, there are so many memories. And you know, now that I'm back in the United States and retired, I dream about this stuff all the time. Probably one of my favorite memories was when journalists were asked to write the meditations for Pope John Paul II's Via Crucis, the way of the cross, that he leads at the Colosseum on Good Friday. You know, most of the time these meditations are done by an eminent theologian or another church official. Well, John Paul wanted journalists to write the meditations this particular year. I think it was 2002. So they asked me to write the meditation for the first station, the agony in the garden. And of course I said yes. And then I sat down and I thought, my God, what do I have to say to the Pope about the agony in the garden? And I really sweated. And I wrote something that I thought was acceptable, and it went through the channels, and then on Good Friday the Pope stood and listened to these meditations and then prayed. In my mind I had conceived a scenario perhaps where the Pope might hear what I had to say and gotten to his feet and said, "It is not so," that there was something theologically wrong here. But of course that didn't happen. He was very gracious. He thanked us all for our contributions. And you know, it brought journalists to a different place in covering the Vatican. These were journalists who were not all Catholics. They were from secular publications. And yet, you know, they had a little taste of what it's like to be on the other side of covering the news.
And it's time to flip through the Pope's day planner to see what's been going on in the papal offices this week. Last Sunday, Pope Francis celebrated Mass at the Roman parish of St. Elizabeth and Zachariah. For one group of kids, it was a day they will never forget. They received their first communion from Pope Francis. Now, before Mass, the Holy Father made himself available to hear confession along with the parish pastor. He also met families of recently baptized babies. During his homily, he spoke about Mary as a mother who goes in haste to help those in need and about the Trinity. His homily appeared quite unscripted, and most of it was a conversation with the first communicants. One touching moment came as the First Communion children sang a traditional hymn to the Holy Father, and he bowed before them to receive their blessing. Wednesday was the general audience at St. Peter's Square, and not even a late spring rain shower could stop the pilgrims from attending. Here is a synthesis of Pope Francis's catechesis.
El proyecto de Dios para la humanidad se presenta muy bien en la parábola del Hijo Pródigo, o mejor, del Padre Misericordioso. Construir una única familia en la que todos se sientan cercanos y amados por Él. Es aquí donde la Iglesia encuentra su raíz. En la historia de la salvación, Dios llama a Abraham para ser padre de una multitud. Elige a Israel para establecer una alianza. Y en la plenitud del tiempo envía a su Hijo, que reúne una pequeña comunidad que al escuchar su palabra sigue su camino y se constituye en su familia. La Iglesia nace del gesto supremo de amor de Jesús en la cruz y se manifiesta cuando el Espíritu Santo colma el corazón de los apóstoles y los impulsa a anunciar el Evangelio difundiendo el amor. Te hará bien hoy preguntarte vos, ¿amás a la Iglesia? ¿Rezás por ella? ¿Te sentís parte de esta familia? ¿Qué haces para que todos se sientan escuchados y comprendidos?
On Thursday, Pope Francis celebrated Mass at St. John Lateran and led a Eucharistic procession from the Basilica of St. John Lateran to the Basilica of St. Mary Major. The Eucharistic procession is a Roman tradition for the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ, carried out in cities and villages throughout Europe. And to conclude the month of Mary, Pope Francis led the recitation of the Rosary at St. Peter's Square on Friday. He gave a brief meditation and then blessed the crowd. Pope Benedict used to end the month of Mary with a public rosary as well. Pope Francis was also scheduled to meet President José Mujica of Uruguay on Saturday. Although Pope Francis is taking it slow in making new appointments, there were some nominations and resignations this week. A new diocese was created in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The new diocese is called the Diocese of Dolisie. It has a total population of 210,000 people. 71,000 are Catholic. It is a suffragan diocese of Brazzaville, and Father Bienvenu Bafuaku becomes the first bishop of this diocese. In Bolivia, Santa Cruz de la Sierra has a new archbishop, Sergio Alfredo Calandrina. He was the coadjutor of Santa Cruz until now. He takes over for Cardinal Julio Sandoval, who presented his resignation after he turned 75. And Father Jorge Solorzano has been named Auxiliary Bishop of Mexico City. Since 2008, Father Solorzano has been director of the Archdiocese Assistance Center for Priests and served as a pastor at a local parish. Father Solorzano succeeds Bishop Francisco Gil, who presented his resignation after also reaching the limit for bishops. And in Italy, Bishop Rodolfo Cetoloni moves from the Diocese of Montepulciano to the Diocese of Grosseto. Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. This week, we bring you a look at the art of writing icons and how it mirrors the story of creation.
When we read in Genesis, it said that God formed humanity out of clay and breathed into the clay and gave the clay life, and that's what we're going to do now. My name is Father Richard Canulli. I'm an Augustinian. I've been teaching art at Villanova for 33 years. I'm really known as a watercolorist, but I've fallen in love with the process of creating icons. I'm going to do this image of not made by human hands. It's the head of Christ. Some people call it the Veronica. So once you have your image laid on the board, you take carbon paper. What I use is I just use a stylus, and I lightly press into the paper. For me, my spirituality is so woven into art that I look at a telephone pole and I see a cross. So now I'm putting the halo in, and I have a little X mark that tells me where the center is. And then using a compass, I'm drawing the shape of the halo. After the image is traced or drawn onto the board, then we take a stylus and we go over every single line that was drawn. And what I usually tell my students when they take the class for the first time, I say to them, where do you find icons? And they all look around because I think they want to say on their computer screen, but they feel that's the wrong answer, and in fact it's the right answer. Because once you click on that icon, it opens a world behind that image. There's no brushwork really on an icon, because a brush stroke would be like a signature, and icons are not signed. And the reason why we use this clay is because we're going to put our gold on this. A normal size icon takes about 40 hours to do. That's a lot of time being quiet. You're not only thinking about what you're doing with the icon, But you think about your own life. What am I supposed to do in life? Am I following the right track? Is this the way in which I should go? It was about 6 years, and that's when I decided to finish studies for ordination. All along I was creating, and now all of a sudden I let go and let God create. So I have my solution. Now my pigments are all natural pigments. They have their own life after you're finished with them, after they're blessed in oil. You kind of have to just let it go. You don't have control over it anymore. It has a life of its own.
That's it for this week's edition of Vatican Connections. As always, you can get daily updates by following us on Twitter @Vaticanections, or check our blog for full texts of Pope Francis's homilies and catechesis. From everyone here, thank you for watching and see you next time.